begins the moment you stop living the one everyone else expected. Welcome to the Soft but Savage Method, Conversations in Becoming, where every week we have honest conversations about rebuilding self-trust, creating emotional stability, and becoming the woman you were always meant to be. I'm your host, Mickey Garcia, and this is episode 10. And today I want to talk about something that sounds so simple, but in reality for a lot of women is just really difficult. And that is knowing what you want. Not what your parents hoped for, not what your partner expected, not what seemed practical or responsible or acceptable. What you want. Because if you've spent years taking care of everyone else, adapting, compromising, surviving, there comes a moment when someone asks, what do you want? And you honestly don't know. Not because you don't have dreams, of course you have dreams, but because you've spent so long pushing them to the side that you've kind of forgotten what they are and how to hear them. So the first thing I want to talk about today is that you can't build a life that you can't let yourself imagine. And this is where we're going to talk about how a lot of women will dismiss their own dreams before they ever really think about how great they could be. You know, you'll say, oh, I could never. It's too late for that. That's completely unrealistic. I should just be grateful for what I have, what's happening, whatever. Not because those things are impossible, really, but because you don't feel like you have permission to want them. You know, one of the saddest things that I hear women say is that, oh, you know, I don't really want anything. But I don't believe that's really true. I think what happened is they stopped allowing themselves to want what they want. You know, because wanting something that felt selfish or it felt unrealistic or irresponsible. So for years, as the kids all grew up and moved out of the house, and we just had the one daughter left at home, I started imagining this future life on this big farm, right? I wanted this big farmhouse. I wanted all this land. And when I say I had this dream, I mean I had this dream. I had the entire thing pictured out in my mind. If I could draw, I would have drawn you a picture. I wanted a huge garden. I wanted chickens. I wanted a milk cow. Maybe a couple of pigs, right? I wanted the whole thing. I wanted to grow as much of our own food as I possibly could, or raise it. I pictured myself preserving those things that came out of the garden or the meat that we grew, lining our basement shelves or our storeroom shelves, whatever the case may be, with all of that homegrown, home-canned food. You know, just really living off the land as much as possible. But I also wanted the house itself to be a place that still felt like home to my kids. I wanted to have enough room that everybody could come over for family dinners, birthday events, parties, Christmas, without everybody either being crammed into a small room or all of us spread all over the house while we ate our main meal, nobody really being together. I wanted a couple of extra bedrooms for the grandkids and for my kids if they decided that they wanted to just spend the night at the house. I wanted them to have a place where they could be comfortable, have a little bit of privacy, and you know, have their own things for the night. So, you know, I built this really, really clear picture of what it was that I wanted. My husband didn't really start out with the same enthusiasm I had. The house we were living in was so close to being paid off. He didn't want to move. He didn't want us to get a new mortgage. He didn't want to go through that whole thing. And I think, at least at the beginning, he really didn't want all of those things that I was imagining for our life moving forward. But I kept pushing for it for years. And finally, I just pretty much given up on it. I just thought, this is never going to happen. This is always just going to be some dream that I have that I can fantasize about, and it's never going to be reality. But then one day, I caught him on his phone checking out properties in some of the areas that we had talked about. And I remember I didn't say anything. I didn't want to interrupt his process. I didn't want to push too hard at that moment, right? But I started thinking, oh my gosh, maybe this is really going to happen. But here's, what I understand now that I didn't really understand then. This dream wasn't really about the house and the property and the chickens and the cow, right? That's yes, I wanted those things, but that's not really what that dream represented. It was really about the feeling that life would give me, right? The space, the freedom, the ability to be creative in the way that we lived our lives. A home where the family could gather and have plenty of space. A life that was slower and more intentional. And I know a lot of you who are, my age or around that probably understand that. We spend so much of our life running from dance class to football practice to band concerts to this event, that event, whatever. We never really slow down. And so I really wanted that. That was really what this whole dream was about, was the ability to slow down and be way more intentional with how we were living our lives. And I wanted it to be a life that felt like mine, not something that somebody else had decided was what I should have, right? And the farmhouse itself then and the property, that was just really the picture that I built in my mind to represent those feelings that I was yearning for. And so I think that's something that we really need to pay attention to when we start thinking about the things that we want from our lives. Sometimes the picture that we have is not really the dream itself. The picture is what that dream represents. It's showing us something about the life that we are really longing to live. And every one of us has a picture like that, right? Maybe yours isn't a farmhouse with land and chickens and pigs and a big garden. It doesn't have to be what my dream is, right? This is your dream. Maybe it's a sleek new apartment in some fancy upscale modern neighborhood. The picture is yours. The dream is yours. But all of us have some picture in our head that represents that life that we're looking for. So the what isn't really the important part here. What's important is, have you given yourself permission to actually want this? So our first becoming moment is this. Your dreams deserve more than occasional attention. They deserve intentional action. So the next thing that I want to talk about is that your life is being built every day by the decisions that you make now. Imagine two women. One of them says, someday I'm going to have a different life. But the other one asks, what's one action I can take today that's going to move me in the direction of that dream that I want? So 10 years later, those women are probably not living the same life, right? Not because one of them is more talented or smarter or really even more driven. It's because the second woman understood something incredibly important. So I talk about this farmhouse dream a lot. I talk to my sisters, my kids, my friends, everybody. Everybody knows this dream that I have. And if you listen to me talk about it long enough, you will probably think that I am looking for, you might think that I'm obsessed with finding the perfect house, the perfect property, the perfect number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, whatever. But that's not it. Because when I picture that life now, I'm not really thinking about how many bedrooms does my house have, what's the square footage, how many acres of property do I have. Those aren't the important things. What I'm really thinking about is, how do I want to feel when I wake up there every morning? I want peace. I want room to breathe. I want to walk outside in the mornings with my coffee and not immediately feel pulled in 10 different directions. I want to grow things and I want to make things. I want my grandchildren to come over and know that they have a place there. There is space for them at my house. I don't just want a house. I want a home that feels like my refuge from everything else that I've been having to manage in my life. And I think that's been a really important realization for me, because for a long time I did think it was about the house and the property and the things. And that's not it. And I don't have to wait until I have that farmhouse to start making decisions. I can ask myself now every day, what choices can I make today that'll move me closer to that life that I want? Maybe I can't buy that acreage today or that farmhouse that I would love, but I can pay attention to what gives me peace. I can notice what things are draining me, and I can make decisions based on the life that I want rather than just recreating the life that I've always had. I can start being more intentional about what and who I allow into my life and what I don't. Because that's how that life starts getting built. Long before I have those keys in my hand, I can build the mindset and the decision-making processes and the feeling that I'm looking for. So your future, it is not built all at once, right? Not very many of us win the lottery and can go out tomorrow and make all these big changes. It's really built just one regular Tuesday at a time. One conversation, one boundary, one application, one walk, one yes or one no. So I spoke about this in a previous episode, but we sometimes tend to think about transformation as just this big overnight event. And that's not really true. Most of the time, it has a tendency to kind of sneak up on us quietly. So our next becoming moment is this. The life you want is built in ordinary moments, not extraordinary ones. Okay, so that brings me to our last point of today's episode, and that is that you need to start building before you feel ready. Think about every major change that you've made in your life. Did you always feel completely ready before it happened? Probably not. You just learned by living it. And the same is true now. You don't become more confident and then build a new life. You create that new life, and then your confidence starts to grow as you keep living it. That first step, it very rarely feels dramatic, right? It could be something as simple as, I'm going to look at some houses today. I think I'm going to update my resume. I'm going to join that class, or I'm going to send that email. So these ordinary decisions over time, they become extraordinary. Our last becoming moment of this episode is this. You don't have to see the whole path to take the next honest step. And maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe you know that there are things about your life that you want to change. Maybe you even have this really clear picture in your head of what you want instead. But there's still this enormous space between here and there. And when you look at that entire process, when you look from point A to point Z, it can be really overwhelming, right? So don't look that far. Right now, today, you only need to look from point A to point B. That's your first step. You don't have to try to figure out your next 5 years. You don't have to know today exactly how you're going to get from the life you're living today to the life that you want to live. That process is going to jump all over as you move through it. All you really need to do is ask yourself this small question. What's the next decision that's available to me? And then answer it. Maybe it's researching something. Maybe it's having a conversation with someone. Maybe it's trying to put a little more money aside. Or maybe it's applying for something. Maybe it's saying no to something you would normally say yes to. And maybe it's simply admitting out loud, I don't want this anymore. None of those things look life-changing in the moment, right? But that's exactly what we've been talking about. Your life is built through ordinary, everyday decisions. And sometimes you're not going to know what step 2 is until you take step 1. You don't need certainty about where that entire path leads. You just need enough self-trust to take the next step that's true for you. So before we close out today's episode, I don't want you to leave here thinking that you need to go reinvent your entire life, right? That is absolutely not what I was trying to say. I just want to leave you with one question. What is one honest step that I can take today? This week's reflection questions are, what part of the life you want have you quietly convinced yourself is impossible? And if you stopped waiting for permission, what is one small step you could take this week towards the life that you actually want? So if today's episode helped you realize that you've been building your life around everyone else's expectations instead of your own, you're not alone. And this is exactly the kind of work that we do in coaching. Together, we'll explore what's been shaping your decisions, reconnect with what matters most to you, and begin creating a life that feels more aligned with the woman that you're becoming. If you're ready for that support, I would love to walk alongside you. You can learn more about coaching and all of my available resources on my website. The links are available in the show notes below. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. And remember, the life you want is not built all at once. It's built one honest decision, one courageous choice, one ordinary day at a time. You don't have to have the whole picture. You just have to be willing to take the next step toward the life that's calling you. Until next time, keep becoming.